You should totally make one of these. I mean, you can buy one. Sure, they're like $100 on up, but I don't have that kind of money. I'm poor. And I don't know how else you're gonna grind steel on a round tube with getting good results, you know, normally. It's really tough. And it's just really not gonna look very good. You're gonna get ridges. And without this, that can conform to the shape of what you're trying to grind, it's really tough. And I hope you really make this. I mean, you made it yourself. How cool is that? You can show your friends, you can put it on Facebook and get all kinds of likes. It's gonna be awesome once you make this thing. Yeah, make one. Before we start our video, or the main part of this, we're gonna talk about some things. This is not for somebody who's really terrible at everything. It's not handy at all. You're gonna have to have some skills like drilling holes and general, you know, engineering design to kind of figure it out. It's not impossible. I would rate this on a scale from 1 to 10. Like me building my car is probably a 10. Making this thing is probably like a 4 in comparison. So you're probably making this thing because you are already doing this kind of work. So you're handy. I'm handy. It's not impossible. We'll get through it together. You have one or two choices of assembling this thing. I chose welding because I know how to weld and it's just way easier than using fasteners and drilling holes. But you could do a no weld option just by simply attaching the back of this to this by using hardware, by drilling holes and then tightening it. The handle, I'm not quite sure how you would attach it without welding, but I'm pretty sure it's possible. And I chose to pivot on the outside of this bar using this little piece of metal I had. You could also just attach it directly to this and have a pivot just like that as a no weld option. So one or two choices, welding, not welding, it's up to you. Let's move to the computer for a little bit and open up the file I created in Onshape, and it'll go over some dimensions of what mine is, and you can use those to help build yours. So here we have the skateboard wheels, right here, right here, right here. This is where the grinder would be. This is the drive wheel. And let's go to sketch number 1 and click view normal to sketch plane, zoom out a little bit. All right, so right here, and right here are the center of the skateboard wheels. This is where the grinder is right here. So from the center to center of the grinder wheel to the immobile wheel is 11.29, and then from the top two wheels it is approximately 11 3/8, and then here to here is 13.5 inches, and I have it set at when it's fully extended downwards at almost 84 degrees. So hopefully that will help you. Let's talk about all the things you're going to need here. You're going to need an angle grinder. Probably an old junky one that you've had laying around forever, like this one I've had for 20 years. If I broke it, I don't really care that much. And it needs to have a nice guard on it, nice solid metal. And when it attaches, it needs to not be able to flex. So I have an Allen bolt in here. Holds it really nice. I can tighten it really well. You're gonna need a spring of some sort. This one happens to be one I got from the hardware store. You're going to need a tap for putting threads into this, and the size of the tap you use, this is a 5/8 arbor, probably less than 5/8. So the bigger it is, the more you have to drill out. So I just chose this M8 by 1.25 tap. And you're going to need the corresponding drill bit for the tap that you choose. We're going to need some skateboard wheels, 3 of them with bearings in them. The bigger the wheel, the faster it's going to spin on your grinder. These ones happen to be 50 millimeters or 2 inches in diameter. You're going to need a bunch of M8 hardware like this. This happens to be a button head bolt, Allen. And why M8? Because that's the inner diameter of the bearing of a skateboard.
You are going to need something on the back side of the grinder arbor that's going to hold directly against the wheel. The third wheel that connects to this is not going to have a bearing in it at all. This is out of a disc sanding attachment. Just a flat disc, and you put it on. And then I ground this out to fit this piece real nicely right in the center. You are going to need some 1x42 belts. This one's fairly common. It's used for, if you can see this little picture here, for that application. We're not going to use it for that, obviously. And here's some more nuts and bolts and washers and things. You're going to need some steel. I chose square tubing because it's nice and easy to cut, and when you need to join two pieces together, you don't have to do any fancy grinding out of it. And this is just a handle I made out of some 1-inch tubing. So 2 pieces of steel, approximately 14 inches long. A handle made out of whatever you want. Step 1 of this build here, you're going to want to drill a hole into this arbor. I know it sounds scary. It wasn't that bad. There's a little divot in the middle of this thing that told me exactly where the center was, and that's pretty important to make it as close to the center as possible. I started out with a little bit, and then I gradually progressed to the correct drill bit for this tap. And then once that was done, I took a little bit of cutting oil in here, and then I ran the tap through it, creating threads on the inside. So that when I put my piece on here, I just put it on like that and thread this M8 bolt into here with a little fender washer, and then you hold the button on the back and then tighten it just like that. Step 2 is going to be putting holes in the ends of your steel for your 2 wheels, both at the ends of them. So I have one here for one wheel, this one's on the other one for the other wheel. Let's get into wheel assembly. For 2 outer wheels, we're going to want an M8 bolt to fit the inside diameter of this M8 bearing. I put a washer on first, and then I'm going to put another washer on, and then I'm going to put another nut on here before we attach it to our arms. Just like so. And you want to tighten it to the point where there's not much play or zero play for your skateboard bearing or wheel to move back and forth. There's very little here. And I kind of like a little so it can angle. And so it spins freely, just like that. The next step is going to be attaching your wheels to the ends of the bars. I chose a fairly long bolt so that I could raise it up to the height of the drive wheel itself. You can't really change that height of the drive wheel, so I just add some washers, get rid of some washers, and you can fine tune what height it needs to be at once it's all assembled, so don't worry about that part right now. The 4th step is going to be attaching your bar to the back of this grinder guard here, and you're going to want to pay attention to the bar not hitting any part of the grinder. You can see I made a little oops, a little too close. So it goes on without interfering with the body of this. Now you're going to want to attach your guard and arm assembly to the grinder itself. And find a position that you can repeat, because that makes a little bit of difference to the tension of the belt. It's going to make it a little shorter or longer. So I just backed it up against the body of this. That way I can repeat it every time. And now we're going to attach the wheel to the grinder itself, upside down. Pull the button on the back and tighten it. You don't want to strip out these threads. Don't over tighten it. It just needs to hold a belt on. It's not that critical. Yeah, just like that. Now it is time for the mock-up here. We're going to try to assemble it without actually permanently affixing anything to anything. So we can't change this distance between here and here. All we can do is change where this arm attaches to this arm. And based upon that, we can set our belt tension. And we're going to want to have it so that it's going to be so darn tight you can almost not even get the belt on. That's what we want right now. So when you find that point of where this is going to intersect with this part and it's going to be able to rotate, we're going to take a Sharpie and mark a hole where it needs to go, and then drill the hole out for your hardware. All right, now that you have your hole drilled, we can put the arm on to this thing. However you want to attach it, that's up to you. I'm assuming you're doing this project because you're intelligent and pretty darn handy. You wouldn't be needing a grinder for this application if you weren't already doing these kind of things. So it's not for the stupid. Alrighty, I'm just gonna do this hand tight now for sake of the demonstration here. And I have not yet attached the spring. Alright, so we're gonna want to put our belt on. And back here, the overall length gets a little shorter. So you're gonna want to have it so you can install the belt up in this position, and then when you bring it down, it gets very, very, very tight. Just like that. And this will be sort of the starting position when you turn your grinder on. And then when you're using it, it's going to rotate back depending on how hard you press on the belt itself or the material that you're grinding. The next step is going to be determining the location of your spring. We want the spring to pull this arm towards the grinder and then stop at some point so that it can't go any further. And you can design that however you would like, but I started out by just drilling a hole here so it has the most leverage. You can't put it like right next to the arm because it's not going to have a whole lot of leverage. You want to put it as far away as you can while still being able to attach the spring to the other arm. So you can see this is really stinking tight. I'm really struggling here. Don't put them so far apart that you can't actually get them in there. Scratching up my new paint job. Oh, there we go. Obviously, this is the difficult part. And if it was not difficult, it probably wouldn't work very well because the string wouldn't be very strong. All right, so I have the spring bolt installed. I'm just going to tap it down a little bit. We want to have it sticking out so it kind of clears this part when it goes forward like that. If it was hitting right here, it would be no good. So we want to have long enough bolts to achieve that. And then I'll tighten this bolt down. This just happens to be a nylock nut, so it can't come out without tightening it all the way. If we tightened it all the way, that would defeat the purpose of having it all the way out. So you're going to want a nylon lock nut for that part. The next part is going to be determining your stops. You can see on my design here, this bar can't go past this point because it physically hits right there. And what would happen if I were to take this one bolt out? This is the stop for the other direction. And let's say you were grinding and he gets to a certain point and then folds in and oh, your belt falls off. So that is the point of this stop. You can turn this in or out depending on how far you want it to extend. At a certain point, it's just going to fall off. So that's the purpose of this bolt. That's the purpose of that. So set your stops accordingly. All right, we're almost done. Now the next step is going to be setting the height of our two outboard skateboard wheels. And we're going to accomplish that by washers. We can test it here, and we can check alignment, but just by moving it around. You can turn the machine on too. If it falls off, it's not like this massive explosion or anything. It just falls off. Nothing too scary. And we want to have it so that it rides in the center of all your wheels, and this is going to help it from falling off. The better aligned all of these are, the more luck you're going to have. And if you really wanted to, for a safety precaution or something, you could add little fender washers to the skateboard wheels and have it so they stick out beyond it and keeps the belt from falling off. But I haven't had that problem. As long as it's set tight, aligned right, and you're not trying to grind something, at a weird angle like this, that's going to pull it off. So if it does fall off, it's not like a massive explosion or anything. It's pretty uneventful, really. You just got to put it back on. We are almost done. Last step is attaching a handle of some sort, depending on you're right or left-handed. I can use this, like this with my right hand here. I can use it like this if I want with my left hand up here. It's going to depend on what you're doing with it. But it's pretty versatile, and you're going to want to try it out physically to decide where you're going to want this handle for you, because I'm not you, and you are special. Just remember that.